America isn't worth fighting for, but Americans are. Americans are because ultimately what they want to do is erase the very core of what makes us Americans, because Americans are built on a land, a territory that was forced through colonization against very native people who still exist today. And unfortunately, not all survived that violence imposed upon them in our creation as a country. However, apart from that, every single other person, no matter what your ethnicity is, if it's not native, you are from a diaspora. Your legacy comes from a region that is not native to this territory, and that's okay. That's okay, because that's the United States of America. See, what they're pushing here is a Eurocentric white supremacy over the actual history and culture of this country. This country is diverse. Yes, that includes white culture. That includes every other culture. DEI isn't just based on non-white. Isn't about being non-white. It's about being diverse, equitable, and inclusive. Like what? The fact that if you have a Southern accent, you shouldn't be categorized as being stupid for having an accent, because you can be intelligent and have a Southern accent. However, without that DEI, automatically you don't want to hire the Southerner because do they speak English? The greatest lie that they've told us is that diversity doesn't include you. Yes, if you're white, it includes you. If you're a man, it includes you. If you're straight, it includes you. If you are LGBT, it includes you. It includes every single person. And the fact that they make us think that there's so little resources that we have to literally go tribe versus tribe when we should be one tribe, that is the greatest lie. The greatest lie is that they continue this Confederate era mentality that there is only so much to go around, when in fact we've realized that we can exist within one culture. We can exist as Americans because we exist here based on permission from the native people who are forced out of here, those who continue to share their space, who continue to share their resources, and we pay them for what? Wanting to go back to a past that wasn't beneficial to them, that wasn't beneficial to the Mexicans who had their territory taken away and then had laws like the Mexican Repatriation Act and the Greaser Act passed in order to erase the culture that existed here before the English-speaking language. See, why is it that they did an executive order to make English the only language? Because they want that erasure. They want that, linguistic territory that is faithful to the legacy promised to them by the British. What is that? Manifest destiny. What is DEI? The white man's burden. What is this? A reconquest. This is a confederacy, a successful confederacy if we allow it to be. And this is the thing. While America may not be worth fighting for as a concept, Americans are, because this is our country, because these are the principles we were born into. These are the rules and regulations that we were told that we were given as long as we were actually in alignment with the rules and orders, which we continue to do so, but our government isn't. And why is that? See, the American government isn't worth fighting for, but Americans are. And sure, I don't mean all Americans. I'm not fighting for MAGA extremists. However, the difference is that the success that I create, that impact, will impact them in a positive lens. And I don't care about that. That's collateral damage that is actually positive. But I do it not because of them, but in spite of them, because Americans are worth fighting for. However, there is that hopelessness, which I'm sure is why there is going to be a brain drain, which is when talent, American talent, will be forced out because of the repressive political environment that is being positioned, right? So brain drain for the United States is a brain gain for other countries, but they want that. They want intellectuals to run away. Why do you think they want intellectuals to run away? So no one is defending the intellectual frontier of the United States of America. That's why I'm here, and that's why other people will remain, because we exist in the belly of the beast, and only from within are we capable of beating it. However, we have to acknowledge the reality of what we are existing in and stop pretending that we are existing in a traditional constitutional government, because ultimately the greatest root of everything we are experiencing is the misinterpretation of Amendment 14, Section 3, which is literally in English is so straightforward, yet they made it so complicated through a manipulation of the law, right? Hijacking of the law. Chief Justice Salmon Chase saying that if it was self-executing, it would mean that it would disenfranchise, Southerners, because apparently all Southerners are Confederates, and therefore the other Southerners weren't capable of running for office? Or was it because no other people in the South were as intellectual as those Confederates? Because ultimately, when you read our actual text, the view that those politicians had of the people is that we were stupid. And that's why we need an electoral college, because they cannot trust and the people to actually vote for a president. So they need to have a filter. That filter is the electoral college, so that the state has control over the presidential election, right? That is a big problem, but here we are. And here's the thing. I don't believe that Democrats have a legislative capability of making that difference. However, they utilize that excuse in order for them to not advocate for the truth. They say that instead of wanting to invoke Amendment 14, Section 3, they chose instead to allow for the peaceful transfer of power. But that's subverting the constitutional order, giving constitutional supremacy to someone who is not the Constitution, a person. For what? Tradition? Tradition of a peaceful transfer of power? When if we voted in a monarchy, would we be capable of having a peaceful transfer of power into a monarchy? The fact that maybe we could means that the judiciary has not done its job. It means that the legislative has not done its job. But that's the thing. The Republican extremists have been working for generations to hijack the channels, to position the Democrats as a control opposition without them knowing, to make this reality a success. And it will remain a success unless the Democrats actually voice their concern that this administration started from the core based on the disqualification that meant that he should have never been in the presidency to begin with. Because only then will they remove that legitimacy that he has. Because since Congress didn't question it, then no one else is questioning the law firms, the university. No one is questioning, because Congress gave its blessing. And because of that, that is why they're bending the knee. The law firm Skadden Arps is literally giving him $100 million in legal services without even an executive order being touched, because they're obeying in advance, right? But because the Democrats gave them the legitimacy by saying, hey, we don't question the validity of this election when it comes to the disqualification, because we just want it to be peaceful. We don't want to disrupt the peace. But ultimately, that came at the sacrifice of our very Constitution. So when you look at him breaking the Constitution, you're like, why is this happening? Know that the Democratic silence, that's also helping. And I know it's not going to create a legislative difference again, but it changes the narrative. It creates a memory that it actually happened. Because right now, the Democrats are helping in that lie that wasn't an insurrection and it wasn't capable of being counted under the provision, when you don't need a criminal prosecution in order to trigger it. You just need that authority, but that authority was kind of crumbled with Trump versus Anderson. However, just vocalizing the fact that the provision says one thing and we're experiencing something else would do a lot, but that's not going to happen unless you pressure. That's where we are, because the courts are very slow, very, very slow. So we need to wake up, and we cannot wake up until it's not just me or other content creators saying this out loud, but the Democratic Party.